Can you complete GTA 5 with only the flare gun? The short answer is no, you can't. But don't click off yet because some very interesting things happened in certain missions, and I also suffered a lot during this. Oh, please, no! Let's start off by listing the rules. Number 1, I can only kill people with a flare gun, obviously. Number 2, I am allowed to give myself a flare gun at any time. So if I run out of ammo or if the game forces me to have a certain weapon, I can use a mod menu to give myself the flare gun. And the final rule is I can't use the mission skip feature. If you have a problem with any of these rules, leave a comment and I'll be sure to ignore it. Alright, let's get into this. The first mission in the game has you rob a cash depot in North Yankton, and I ran into trouble basically right away. A guard takes Michael hostage and the game switches you to Trevor to shoot him. When I tried to kill him with my flare gun, the guard would immediately shoot Michael. I tried to kill this guard a lot, probably too many times if I'm being honest. Hell, I even tried to shoot Michael with the flare gun to see if that had any different effect. It didn't. In the end, I had to shoot the guard with my rifle. After that, we broke out of the cash depot and were met with some cops. They didn't really give me any problems. I was able to pick them off, and before I knew it, we were to the getaway car. While trying to escape the cops, the driver gets shot, so Michael takes over driving. He gets the car hit by a train, which forces us to walk on foot. As we are walking, Brad gets shot along with Michael, and Trevor runs to cover like a little bitch. He also makes a promise to Michael that I immediately break.
I'm gonna leave you, Mikey!
That brings us to the end of the first mission, where I have to add one non-flare gun kill to the count. The next mission, we meet Franklin and Lamar in Los Santos, and they repo some cars for a very legitimate businessman by the name of Simeon. Simeon then has Franklin and Lamar go repo a bike from a gangster, and what do you know, it goes horribly wrong. As we are getting the bike, some vagos confront us, which leads to a big shootout. All I had to do was sit back and take them out from a distance, as Lamar was killing some as well. After the shootout in the alley, the gangster shows up on the bike. I tried to shoot him, but the flare hit the gate and he sped away. I got in a car and started chasing him. Eventually, he ran into some women, which slowed him down enough so I could shoot him. I guess women are useful for more than cooking. Am I right, fellas, or am I right? I got on the bike and met up with Lamar at a car wash where he took it for himself. In the next mission, Simeon has Franklin go repo an SUV that he just sold to the alpha male Jimmy. When I got to the house, the game wanted me to take out the gardener, but when I shot my flare gun, it failed the mission. So I just snuck around the side, hopped in an open window, and got the SUV. On the way back to the dealership, Michael, who was hiding in the back, pulled a gun on me. When we got to the dealership, Michael told me to drive through the window, but Franklin had a problem with that because driving through a window is asking too much, but killing a bunch of people in an alley is fine. After driving through the window, the game wanted me to get into a fist fight with Simeon. I didn't want to do that since it'd kind of be like using something other than the flare gun in combat, so I gave myself one and shot Simeon with it. He ended up dying shortly after. My new plan was to start a fire on the carpet and damage Simeon like that, but the absolute Chad was just standing in the fire, not taking any damage. When I got close to him, the SUV exploded, killing us both. After trying a few more times, he just kept dying and I was about to quit until I shot Simeon in the dick and he started rolling around in the fire. I was fully expecting him to die like all the other times, but the fire died out and Simeon was just laying there in pain. After a while, the cutscene played where Michael calmly explained that he did not want the vehicle anymore, so Simeon, being the nice man he is, took the vehicle back free of charge. After that successful negotiation, Michael heads back to his house for a nice relaxing drink. Franklin shows up and asks for one as well. Michael agrees, and just when they are about to leave, Jimmy calls Michael and tells him he's been kidnapped while trying to sell Michael's yacht. Franklin agrees to help Michael get his son back by jumping from a moving car onto a boat at a high rate of speed. He's doing this all for a guy he just met who held him at gunpoint and forced him to drive through a store's window, by the way. When Franklin jumps on the boat, one of the guys tries to knock him off, so I shot him. I followed the boat until Jimmy was able to fall into the car and Franklin was able to jump back on. The car broke down, so we couldn't chase the boat anymore. We went to a shop to get it fixed, and then Franklin took Jimmy home. The next mission starts off with Michael catching his wife having sex with the tennis coach. Franklin shows up and Michael asks for his help once again. Of course, Franklin agrees to help. They chase the tennis coach into the hills and pull down what they think is his house. On their way back, some guys in cars come after them, trying to kill them. They weren't hard to take out at all. I barely took any damage. They head back to Michael's house when Mark Madrazo shows up and asks them nicely for a couple $1 million to repair his house. Michael agrees and he calls an old buddy named Lester for help. Lester says he'll help, but needs Michael to do something for him first. Michael goes to the Life Invader office where he helps a Sigma male named Ricky clear his computer of some viruses. After that, he rigs a prototype that Jay Norris, the CEO of Life Invader, will be showing off later that day. Michael heads back to his house and watches as Jay Norris is showing off the new phone. Michael decides to call Jay to congratulate him on how good it looks when...
Hello? Oh!
Well, let's move on from that. Shortly after, Lester sends Michael an email about getting into the stock market, so I dumped all of Michael's money into some shitty stocks in hopes that they would 100x and Michael wouldn't have to go back to a life of crime. But just in case they didn't, I decided to scope out a jewel store that Lester thought would be good to rob. After checking it out, we went back to Lester's factory to choose our approach. I decided to do the loud approach with a good driver and a decent gunman. When it came to the hacker, I chose Ricky. You may be wondering why I chose such a shit hacker. That's because he called me earlier and said he knew I was the one who killed Jay Norris.
I know you're the bro who deactivated Jay, bro.
He was also pretty angry because his company shares weren't worth much anymore because of what I did.
Now, my shares ain't worth dick.
Since I didn't want to risk angering the Sigma male Ricky, I hired him. But before we could start the heist, I needed to complete a couple more missions. The first one didn't involve any shooting. Lamar and Franklin tried to kidnap a gangster named D, but they had to let him go because Lamar called for the ransom on a cell phone. The other one starts off with Michael taking Jimmy down to the beach for a bike ride. After I absolutely destroyed Jimmy in the race, he let me know that Tracy was out on a boat doing drugs and making porn. I jumped off the pier, swam to the boat, and got Tracy off of it. Then the guys started chasing after us. I tried to shoot them off of their jet skis with the flare gun many times, but it didn't work. So I decided to just outrun them, which was super easy. I dropped Tracy off with Jimmy and got distracted by her, personality so much that I can't remember what else happened. After that, the heist setup I needed for the jewel store spawned. I had to get a SWAT SUV that was carrying a bunch of rifles. Luckily, they hit a tree as I was chasing them, which caused them all to get out. I killed the driver as he was exiting, and he ended up being the only one I needed to kill since all the others ran away. I delivered the guns to Lester's factory, and it was finally time to start the jewel store heist. The heist starts off with the crew pulling up to the jewel store and breaking in. I tried to shoot a case with the flare gun, but it didn't work. As I was doing that, one of the hostages got up and tried to hit the alarm. You can probably guess how that went for him. I let my crew members do all the work getting the jewels. Then we used the dirt bikes to make our getaway to the Ellis River. When we got there, I tried to kill the cops with my flare gun, but it didn't work since they were in cars. So I just hit them lightly, which disabled their cars, but did not kill them. We loaded the dirt bikes into the back of the truck and went to the lockup where Lester was waiting for us. After completing the heist, I drove to Michael's house where an FIB agent by the name of Dave Norton showed up, and he basically called Michael a dumbass for doing the heist, citing some concerns about an old friend he used to work with. We switched to Trevor mid cutscene where he is giving Ashley the Heimlich maneuver. Oh, never mind, they're just having sex. Trevor is basically Walter White, except he doesn't have an annoying wife or a son who is, well,
Kind of retarded.
he recognizes a quote that a witness said one of the robbers used. He didn't have much time to think about that though, because Johnny, Ashley's boyfriend, comes to tell Trevor he doesn't appreciate him having sex with his girlfriend. They talk it out like mature adults, and Trevor agrees to not have sex with her anymore. Trevor then decided it's a good idea to go kill the majority of the biker gang Johnny was a part of. Trevor brings his friends Ron and Wade to meet up with some of the lost, who, upon hearing what I did to Johnny, tried to flee to their camp. Of course, I followed them and they led me right to their camp that had a bunch of bikers in it. This part took me a little while longer than I expected. I had to slowly move between cover as well as occasionally picking up health packs. After killing a sufficient amount of bikers, Trevor sends Wade to see if there are any Michael Townleys living in Los Santos. He also decided he needed to kill Ortega, the leader of the Aztecas, which is another gang in Sandy Shores. The reason why Trevor is going on this killing spree of gangs in the area is because he doesn't want any competition to his meth business. Trevor goes to Ortega's trailer, pushes it in a river. Then, as Ortega came out to talk, I shot him with my flare gun, which surprisingly killed him considering he fell into water right after. Then Trevor drops Ron off at his house, and that is the end of Trevor's first mission. The next mission starts with Trevor meeting up with Mr. Chang and his translator in a bar. As they were all leaving to take a tour of Trevor's meth lab, Chef called to let Trevor know the Aztecas were coming to attack the lab. Now, don't get me wrong, I was concerned about this, but there was a number on a corkboard that I needed to call for personal reasons.
Stop prank calling me!
Well, that was disappointing. After that, I drove Mr. Chang and his translator to the meth lab where I hid them in an icebox. Then Chef and I went upstairs where we took out some of the incoming Aztecas. They eventually broke through the back gate, so Chef and I were forced to go outside to kill them. Once the initial guys were dead, reinforcements came in from the other side of the building. It took a while to kill these guys just because there were so many. After all those reinforcements were dead, even more reinforcements came to the front of the store. Chef made his way downstairs, and after a little bit of trouble, I joined him. We took out the rest of the Aztecas as they were trying to break in. Then I freed Mr. Chang and his translator from the icebox. Trevor makes his way back to his trailer where he finds out the remaining members of the Lost have wrecked it. Wade comes over and Trevor yells at him for not doing a good enough job finding out if there are any Michael Townleys in Los Santos. To get back at the bikers, Trevor decides to take over their airfield with the help of Ron. After getting a sniper, I met up with Ron at a water tower where we waited till night so Ron could sneak in. While sneaking in, Ron spotted a biker he couldn't get past, so he wanted me to take him out. I switched to my flare gun and tried to find the perfect angle to shoot it so that the flare would hit him. Now, even though I got a D- in geometry, the flares were getting pretty close. Eventually, I found the right angle and killed the biker. A van starts to approach the body, which causes Ron to freak out, and he tells me to shoot out the lights. I didn't because 1, I didn't want to use the sniper to shoot them out, and 2, you don't need to do it. The van passes by the body and the driver gets out to call the dead guy. Then Ron tells me to take him out. I did my best, but this guy kills Ron pretty quick. On my second attempt, the first biker took a lot longer to kill. In fact, I didn't even kill him. It turned morning and the mission failed. For the third attempt, I decided to kill the first biker with the sniper so I could get more practice killing the second guy. I got a lot of shots off on the second guy, but none of them ended up hitting. On the fourth attempt, I gave myself infinite ammo to see if the second biker was even able to be killed with flares. None of them hit and he ended up killing Ron once again. After a few more attempts, I was able to hit the second biker and kill him while using infinite ammo. Now, I know what you may be thinking. Hey Buzz, you cheated. You can't use infinite ammo to shoot a bunch of flares like that. Shh, just shut up, you pathetic little idiot. I'm sorry, I love you. I'll explain it in a bit. After I killed the second biker, Ron with his 200 IQ crawled into a fire one of the flares had started and ended up dying. I ended up killing the first 2 with the sniper to progress the mission a bit, which caused another guy to spawn on top of the tower. I shot a bunch of flares at him. All of them ended up missing, then he killed Ron. After failing a bunch more times, I decided I was just gonna snipe these guys. Actually, I'm not. Hey, it's me from the future. Man, that was so cringe and stupid. Originally, I had some bullshit excuse for not wanting to waste time finding the perfect angle to kill these guys, but that didn't seem good enough to me. So I redid it and it took me over 4 hours. Kinda wish I would have stuck with the bullshit excuse. Oh well. At the beginning, I kept trying to kill the third guy using the same strategy as before, but had no success. I decided to climb down the water tower and stand in this spot to try and find a better angle. I shot a bunch of flares while using infinite ammo, and after hitting him a few times but not killing him, I figured the infinite ammo might be causing problems for some reason. So I turned it off and was able to kill the third guy on my next attempt. Immediately after, another biker comes around the corner and finds the first biker we killed. This guy alerts the other bikers really quick, which obviously made it more difficult to kill him. I stayed on top of the water tower and some flares were getting close, but they seemed to be coming up a bit short. I decided to hop down to the lower level of the water tower and stand here since I would be a bit closer. I also found out that if I angled the camera just above this tower, the flares would land exactly where I needed them to. After failing a couple more times, I was able to kill the fourth biker while using infinite ammo. After killing that guy, another biker who was in the tower comes to check on the third guy I killed. I got in the same position on the ground that I used to kill the third biker and started trying to kill the new one. I continued using infinite ammo and was able to hit the biker a few times, but it didn't kill him. This time, instead of switching off infinite ammo, I kept using it, thinking it was a fluke that he didn't die from it. A few attempts later, I found out I was right and killed the fifth biker. Ron makes his way over to a tanker when a guy comes out of the building next to it. This guy didn't give me any problems. I got him on my third attempt, but I didn't use infinite ammo because the same thing happened where I would hit him with some flares and he wouldn't die. You may be wondering, why did I turn it off for this guy and not the previous guy when the same thing was happening? I don't know. I guess I thought it wasn't a fluke this time for some reason. I'm stupid, okay? Leave me alone. There wasn't much time to celebrate though, because right after killing this guy, another biker walks out of the same building and finds the body. I had the least amount of time to kill this biker out of all of them. He kills Ron roughly 25 seconds after finding the body, and for most of that time he is on the move, making it even harder to hit him. After nearly an hour of trying to kill him, I finally hit him, but guess what? It didn't kill him. I was using infinite ammo, and I think that was the problem because nearly 45 minutes later, I hit him while not using it, and he died. The final biker rides up while Ron is planting explosives on the gas tank. He gets off his bike and starts making his way over to Ron. I found a spot that got flares roughly on the path the biker used to walk to him. It was on the lower level of the water tower in the same spot I used to kill the 4th biker. Once I was in position, I would look towards the tanker and angle my camera up until these smaller cactuses were just out of sight. I was using infinite ammo, and I'm sure you guys can guess what happened. I hit him but didn't kill him. So I switched it off, and after many more attempts, I was able to hit him and kill him. There was still something I had to take out in this mission though, the helicopter. Yeah, long story short, I wasn't able to do it. I tried using infinite ammo, regular ammo. At one point I had like 10 flares in the blades of the helicopter and it still wasn't doing any damage, so I ended up sniping the pilot. Here's what I'm gonna do to count non-flare gun kills. Obviously the helicopter pilot counts as 1. I'm not counting the other biker in the helicopter since he dies in a cutscene. As for the ground bikers, I am counting biker number 2, 4, and 5 since they were the ones I killed while using infinite ammo, making our total non-flare gun kills 4. Alright, back to me in the past. The next part of this mission was super easy. I drove the short distance to the airfield and took out the rest of the bikers while moving from cover to cover. After that, you hop on the wing of a plane Ron is driving so he can take you down the runway to a different plane. For this part, you can just not shoot anyone and use Trevor's special ability to not die, or you can do a glitch that allows you to use any weapon while you ride on the plane. I decided to do the glitch, which allowed me to shoot the flare gun super fast, and I didn't need to reload in between shots. After getting in the plane, you make a drop in the ocean for a man named Oscar Guzman. Then you race Ron back to an airfield and the mission is complete. In the next mission, Trevor meets up with his Chinese contacts again, where they let him know they are working with the O'Neills, an inbred family who runs a meth business instead of Trevor. After hearing this news, Trevor goes to the O'Neill farm to kill them. There are a shit ton of O'Neills when you get to the farm, and it'd be a good idea to take them out from afar. Of course, I couldn't do that with the flare gun, so I rushed in, killed a few, and a bunch started coming towards me. I retreated and eventually they killed me. On my second attempt, I tried to keep my distance, but these guys are really accurate and they killed me easily. I tried the opposite on my third attempt by staying close to them. It didn't work. I got absolutely destroyed on my fourth attempt. Since my main problem was too many of them coming at me too quick, I decided to get their attention and then head back to my dune buggy, which I could use to drive away if I got overwhelmed. It was going pretty good. I would shoot a few shots at them from a distance and drive away when they got too close until I crested a hill and they lasered me. After dying a few more times, I decided to go back to the dune bug strategy. Using this strategy, I was able to slowly but surely kill all the O'Neill brothers that would come after me. There were still some in the house, including ones on top of the balcony. Those guys were really hard to take out because they take cover and the angle of the flare has to be perfect to hit them. There was only one left that I was trying to get when for some reason I decided to not take cover when reloading and he was able to kill me. If you're wondering why I wasn't using my dune buggy for this part, the other O'Neills hit my gas tank earlier. I got about 50 bullets put in me within a fourth of a second on my next attempt, so that was fun. After a few more deaths, I was able to do the same strategy to take out all the guys that ran after me. I moved closer to kill the balcony guys, and after killing one, my flare started a fire that killed the other. The only ones left were inside of the house, so I went back to get my dune buggy in case I needed a quick escape. I drove around the house picking off the ones that were by windows. After I felt like I had killed a sufficient amount, I approached the entrance where I killed a few more of them. Next, I entered the house, made sure the upstairs was clear, and killed the basement guy. All there was left to do was pour gasoline in the house and light it on fire. You would think that would be easy, but no, it wasn't. After pouring the trail of gasoline, I tried to light it on fire with my flare gun, which didn't work. I'll say that again. After shooting it with my flare gun, a thing that can easily cause fires, it didn't work. I figured, okay, maybe I just can't hit it directly with the flare for some reason. So I started trying to bounce the flare off of things to get the trail to light. After having multiple flares touching it, the trail still didn't light. I tried moving the explosive barrels there to see if I could explode them and that would cause it to light, but they were way too hard to move. After 10 minutes of trying other random things, I went into the house to try and catch one of the dead bodies on fire. Since they were already burnt, they didn't catch on fire. I couldn't light any other part of the house on fire either. I went outside to call the cops so I could get a fresh body to light on fire, and just like in real life, the police never show up when you need them. I ended up running a bit too far and the mission failed. When I was pouring the trail again, I realized the bodies weren't burnt anymore. I poured a bunch of gas on one of them, finished the trail, then went back in the house and shot the body. It caught on fire, but I wasn't able to escape the house in time. So on my next attempt, I poured the trail like normal, then went into the house and started very slowly pushing a body outside. It took me about 10 minutes to get it where I wanted it. Now, I know that doesn't sound like a lot of time, but trust me, when you are moving a body inch by inch, it feels like an eternity. When the body was finally in position, I shot it and luckily it worked. Trevor heads back to his house where he finds Wade. Wade lets him know that none of the Michael Townleys in Los Santos match the description, but there was someone named Michael DeSanta. Trevor decides to go check if this Michael DeSanta Santa is the one he's looking for, but before he leaves Sandy Shores, the rest of the bikers need to be killed. I drove to their camp and the game wanted me to plant sticky bombs on their trailers. Not wanting to get any kills without the flare gun, I lured all the bikers away and killed them all. By the way, they have much worse aim than the O'Neills for some reason, so that made it a lot easier. I threw a sticky bomb on a trailer and shot it with my flare gun to try and explode it. That didn't work, so I threw the rest of the bombs on the trailers and exploded them. Then I drove to Floyd's apartment, who is Wade's cousin, in Los Santos, and made myself at home. Trevor goes to find Michael DeSanta to see if it's the guy he used to rob banks with. It turns out it is. They have a wonderful reunion, become friends again, and live happily ever after. Just kidding. Michael is terrified that a psycho he fucked over 10 years ago showed up in his house. Even though they both have many questions for each other, they decide they need to go save Tracy from embarrassing herself on Fame or Shame. When they get there, Michael gets into a little scuffle with Laszlo, the host of Fame or Shame, and Trevor gives a security guard some brain damage. Laszlo starts trying to escape in his Prius, so Michael and Trevor chase him in a semi. Eventually, Laszlo's car breaks down in the Ellis River, and they take an embarrassing video of him in his underwear to use for blackmail. After that, Lester wired Michael his cut of the jewel store job. I decided to check how Michael's investments were going, and he had lost nearly $700. I saw Life Invader was down 80%. I wonder why that is. I decided to buy the dip and put about $250,000 in it. That was only half of Michael's money, so I looked around for another stock and saw one that was up about 0.5%. This was a clear sign it was about to go to the moon, so I dumped the rest of Michael's money in it. Then Michael meets up with Dave at the observatory, where Dave explains he needs some help seeing if a man called Mr. K is still alive, or if the IAA has killed him. After a little bit of persuading, Michael agrees to help Dave out. Michael wakes up just before he has an autopsy done of him. After choking one of the guys out, I made my way over to the bodies to see if any of them were Mr. K. They weren't, so I called Dave to let him know, and then I was forced to fight my way out of the building. I died after a couple of poorly placed shots on my first attempt. My second attempt went a lot better. I took out all the guys on the bottom floor without any problems. When I got to the top floor, it was a little more difficult because it wasn't as open, but I was still able to kill everyone. I shot out the window with my flare gun and jumped into a dumpster below. After losing the cops, I met up with Franklin to tell him what's going on, and that was the end of the mission. On my way to meet up with Dave again, Tracy called me to let me know how much she loved me.
You're such a fucking fuck, you really are!
Oh, yeah, she's still probably mad about the whole Fame or Shame thing. When I got to my meeting with Dave, there was a guy named Steve there. Basically, he is this big time FIB guy with a huge ego. He lets us know that Mr. K is about to be tortured by the IAA, and he wants me to kidnap him so the FIB can torture him. I met up with Trevor and Franklin to go save Mr. K. I don't know if save is the right word, but I'll go with it. We flew above the IAA building, and Michael rappels down to the room Mr. K is in. He breaks through the window and takes Mr. K hostage. After that, you need to switch to Franklin to snipe some guys. Since the game was forcing me to use a sniper, I used the mod menu to give myself a flare gun. If you're angry, I allowed myself to do this. Trust me, I wish I didn't either, because doing this part with a flare gun is harder than a pedophile at a playground. Also, side note, when I was younger, I would point at my dad while my family was shopping and yell pedophile while running away. Looking back, I'm surprised my dad never got the cops called on him. I have no idea why I included that little story. Anyway, let's get back to the mission. There are a couple reasons why this part is so hard with a flare gun. Number one, you can only shoot through a single window, which makes some of the guys very hard to hit. And the other reason is that the fire that is started from the flares will kill Michael. Not instantly, but eventually it does. After a few attempts, I was able to shoot the initial guys and trigger the next ones to spawn. The fire was helping me take them out, which I was pretty amused by.
The fire is really helping me.
Little did I know I would come to absolutely despise the fire.
God fucking damn it!
It only took me 2 more attempts for Michael to start extracting Mr. K from the building. When this happens, the game prompts you to switch to Michael. When you switch to him, he has an AP pistol equipped. I quickly tried to give myself the flare gun, but I was too slow and the IAA guys ended up killing me. The next attempt ended sorta similar to that one, except this time I didn't give Franklin the flare gun in time. It may seem like I was just randomly shooting and hoping for the best, but I did have somewhat of a plan. The plan was to directly hit everyone I could, then use a combination of ricochets and the fire to kill everyone else. The obvious problem with this was that the fire was far more likely to reach Michael and kill him before it killed all the other IAA guys. Another problem was this motherfucker. He is one of the 3 original guys who spawn. He is very hard to hit with ricochets and the fire usually won't reach him in time before he kills Michael, so most attempts ended because of him. Some attempts did end from my own stupidity, like this time where I wanted to see if I could hit Michael with a flare. Surprise, surprise, I could. After many attempts and some more rages, I finally got Michael to start the extraction again. It started off with me shooting the guy on the left and then the guy in the middle. Then I shot one of the reinforcements as he came in the room. A few seconds later, the motherfucker I was talking about died from fire. I was able to shoot another reinforcement easily and got some lucky ricochets on others. I thought I was done and was waiting for Michael to pull out Mr. K when I noticed one more guy. He was in a spot that made it extremely hard to hit him, but I didn't even think that would matter because the fire was extremely close to Michael and I figured it would kill him soon. After a nerve-wracking few minutes, the fire died out and I started trying to kill the final guy. I shot many flares at him before I realized something. Every time he would reload, a small part of his arm was out in the open for a very short amount of time. It took a while, but I was eventually able to perfectly time a flare to hit his arm, which killed him. When Michael pulled out Mr. K this time, I stayed as Franklin for a while and shot some more flares. I think that helped because when I switched to Michael, I had a lot more time to equip a flare gun and kill the rest of the guys. I was pretty happy to be over with this part.
Thank fucking God.
For this next part, you have to destroy a helicopter before it kills Franklin. I was very confused when this first happened, so I'm just gonna play this clip for you guys and explain it after.
Holy fuck. What the fuck?
So what happened? Did the flare magically explode the buzzard? Did a random guy help Franklin and explode it for him? Did my crush in high school say yes when I asked her out? No, she did not. And no to all the other questions as well. If you look closely before I shot, one of the helicopters that was chasing Michael and Trevor shot a rocket at them. The flare I shot shortly after that landed on top of the buzzard, and since flares redirect rockets, the rocket that was shot at Michael and Trevor got redirected and hit the buzzard I needed to take out. If you slow down the clip, you can see two more rockets that got redirected. I'm pretty sure one of them is a rocket that got shot by the buzzard directly in front of Franklin, since the rocket comes from behind him. To take out the two helicopters chasing Michael and Trevor, I switched over to Trevor and flew in between the buildings, which caused the helicopters to crash into them. Then all that was left to do was fly back to the lockup and give Mr. K to the FIB. After that, I switched to Franklin, and when I walked into his house, there was... I don't even really know how to describe what was happening. When he walked outside to get away from that, Lamar and an old friend Stretch were there. They convinced Franklin to come along to a business deal they had planned. We drove to the ammunition and the game forces me to buy a shotgun. I will totally use that a lot in this playthrough. Then we drove to the factory where the meeting was taking place. Franklin points out how they were just trying to kidnap D, the guy they were meeting with. D basically lets us know that he set us up and Stretch isn't too happy about that. Since the ballas are closing in, we had to fight our way out of the factory. Everything was going good. I was easily making my way through the ballas. Then in the final room, my flare started going through this guy. I shot him a bunch of times and was basically convinced I would have to shoot him with a normal gun until I went up the stairs behind him, and for some reason my flares worked on him now. I cleared out the last ballas and made my way outside where we were faced with a police helicopter. The game would not let me progress until this helicopter was destroyed. I started by trying to take out the SWAT guys on the side and my flares seemed to have no effect on them. I shot it for a few minutes and the only damage I had to show for it was a broken windshield. While looking up videos to see if it was even possible to shoot down a helicopter with a flare gun, the helicopter just caught on fire and crashed. I'm pretty sure Lamar and Stretch were able to shoot it down. All that was left to do was get a car and escape the police. I switched over to Michael to do his next mission called Did Somebody Say Yoga? In this mission, you do yoga, try to attack the yoga instructor for dry humping Amanda, take Jimmy to buy drugs, he ends up drugging you, and you have a pretty cool trip. You wake up in your underwear, run back to your house, and find out your family has left you. After that depressing mission, I switched back to Franklin where he is getting berated by his aunt and Lamar for not being a good enough gangster. Trevor shows up and flirts with Aunt Denise. Then Lamar lets us know he has another business deal planned. Since the last one went so good, Franklin and Trevor go with. We make our way over to Grove Street to do a drug deal, and Trevor notices something is up. He suspects the brick is mostly drywall, and he is right. Then the gangster tells the whole neighborhood to come kill us. To take out the first few gang members, I used cars as cover and shot them from afar. Lamar and Trevor also took out some. We moved up to take out the rest of the gangsters, and I ran into a massive problem. Just kidding, these guys were just as easy to take out as the ones before. When we were making our way to the jet skis, Lamar was apparently in such a rush that he pushed me over. We got on the jet skis, drove up the Ellis River, and decided to split ways. I hopped off and was able to lose the cops on foot fairly easily. I switched to Trevor where he had just escaped the cops. I ran around for a bit and found this really odd looking vehicle. At the time, I thought this was a vehicle that I somehow hadn't seen before, but upon closer look, look, it was a cement mixer and the mixer part just wasn't fully loaded in. After driving around for a bit, Steve called me and told me to meet at a secluded warehouse where they were keeping Mr. K. Trevor tortures him for a bit to get some information about a guy that Michael and Dave are going to kill. When they get to the party the guy is at, they determine that the information Mr. K gave wasn't good enough, so Trevor rips another tooth out. Yet again, Mr. K didn't give enough information for Michael and Dave. I ended up pulling out 2 more of his teeth before Mr. K finally gave us enough of a description of the guy. I gave myself the flare gun and my first shot was a little too far. I failed a few more times, but I was finally able to find the right angle and hit him. Steve then tells Trevor to kill Mr. K, but Trevor doesn't want to do that. I don't know why he didn't want to kill him. Trevor clearly doesn't have a problem with killing people. He's just an odd dude, I guess, if that wasn't obvious enough. So I drove him to the airport and let him go free. I drove back to Floyd's apartment and Trevor convinces Floyd to let him steal something from where he works. When we get to the port, Rockstar thought it would be a good idea to have us work a 9 to 5. After finishing my shift and taking some pictures of the ship, I drove over to the warehouse with Floyd, where he got beat up by some Merryweather guys. It wasn't for nothing though, as Trevor was able to steal a briefcase with the shipping manifesto in it. With that, Trevor learns that Merryweather has something big for them to steal, so he heads back to Floyd's apartment to plan the heist. I chose the offshore version because it's a lot easier than the freighter version. Trevor then calls Michael to invite him and Franklin to do the heist with him. Before we can do the heist, we need 2 pieces of equipment, one being a submarine and the other a cargo bob. I had no problem getting the sub. All I had to do was board the ship, press a button to drop the sub in the water, drive it to a place to get it loaded on a semi, and then store it in a warehouse. The cargo bob was a little more difficult to get. I had to break into the military base to get it. When I first drove in, I got lit up by some army guys and thought they were gonna kill me. I somehow lived though and was able to get into a cargo bob. As I was flying back to the airfield, a buzzard came after me. I was trying to lose it in the mountains when it hit me with a rocket. Even with the cargo bob being badly damaged, I somehow got away and was able to land at the airfield. Now we can start the heist. I drove back to Floyd's apartment to meet up and explain the details to Michael and Franklin. We drove to Sandy Shores Airfield where I, as Michael, picked up the submarine with the cargo bob. I think I picked it up a little too early because it didn't look like Trevor was fully in yet. After that, I dropped the sub in the ocean where Trevor picked up the thing Merryweather was hiding at the bottom of the ocean. Then I picked Trevor back up and Merryweather started to come after us. All I had to do was angle the cargo bob so Franklin could shoot down the other helicopters. The only thing that went wrong in this heist was me giving Trevor a concussion by bashing the submarine into a mountain. But hey, there's much worse submarines Trevor could have been on. When we got back to the airfield, Lester let us know we had actually stolen a super weapon and we would all be dead very soon if we kept it. Trevor tells Wade to go put it back in the ocean and Trevor starts to think of another score they can pull. I decided Franklin didn't do enough killing in that heist, so I started his assassination mission. He meets up with Lester on a random bench where the details are given to him. I drove to the hotel in a car only the best assassins in the world would use. Then I waited for the target to walk outside and shot him along with some of his security members. After that, all I had to do was lose the cops and the mission was over. After that, I drove to meet with Steve Haynes where he politely asked us to do another favor. He wants us to rob an armored car carrying bonds for the FIB. We have to do 5 things before that though. The first is buy some masks for the boys. The second one, buy some boiler suits for the boys. The third, kill an innocent man for his tow truck. Fourth, steal a garbage truck. And finally, get a getaway car. I met back up with the guys, and before we started, Michael had something he wanted to show us on his phone.
Awkward.
The mission started off with Michael moving a garbage truck in the middle of the road to stop the armored truck. Franklin then slams into it with the tow truck, sending it crashing through a wall. The game wanted me to blow the back doors off of the truck, so I threw a sticky bomb on it and tried to explode it with my flare gun. That didn't work, so I just blew it up normally. My first attempt went pretty well. I killed the initial cops that came in, as well as the reinforcements in the alley. The angle I had to shoot the flare to hit the snipers was a little hard to find, but eventually I got them. When the helicopter came, I switched to Trevor and tried to shoot it down. I shot a bunch of flares at it, and after 10 minutes, I got killed by a cop that was hiding in a storage container. On my second attempt, I still had no problems with the cops. When the helicopter came this time, I stayed as Franklin for a while. I looked up and saw Trevor had done a lot of damage to the helicopter. I shot a flare at it, which bounced off, and shortly after, it exploded. All that was left to do was destroy the garbage truck. I tried to drive it in the ocean, but apparently that was in public, so I brought it to the getaway car location, shot the gas tank with the gun, tried to light the gas on fire with my flares, which didn't work, so I just exploded exploded it with a grenade. Then I switched to Michael to give a billionaire named Devin the bonds when he let me know he had a job opportunity that involved stealing some cars. After the mission ended, I decided to check on Michael's stocks. 2 of them were doing okay, they were up about 1% combined, but Taco Bomb was down 22%. Hopefully Michael doesn't pull a Kurt Cobain with returns like that. To get the cars for Devin, Franklin raced the trust fund kids that had them. He led them to a trap where Michael and Trevor were disguised as cops. Eventually they pulled over for us and Michael nicely explained they had to get out of their cars. We decided to race the cars back, but Franklin was sure to tell us to be careful with them.
Don't mess up the cars, you hear me?
After that, I did another mission where you get a car for Devin. In the mission, we are looking for this guy named Chad Mulligan who has a Z-Type. Trevor pilots a police helicopter where he can scam people who have criminal records, while Franklin is on the ground to confront Chad. Eventually, we find him. He runs away and hides in a parking garage. Franklin finds him and you can either spare him or kill him. If you spare him, he calls the police on you, so I shot him off of his feet with a flare gun. Then you deliver the car to Devin's hangar and the mission is complete. I switched over to Michael to do a mission for Solomon, a famous movie producer. In the mission, Michael has to convince some actors who are asking for more money to still act cheap in Solomon's movie. The actors were on a rooftop that had a lot of workers on it that I could not alert or else I would fail. The flare gun was not a quiet enough weapon to kill the workers, so I went around the back of the building where I found a ladder I could climb and get on the other side of the roof. From there, I found another ladder that led straight up to the top of the roof where the actors were waiting. Rocco, a talent agent, comes out and doesn't like the fact I am trying to get the actors to work for less. The game wants you to beat him up with your fists. I tried to burn him with my flare gun, but every time it would hit him, it killed him. So unfortunately, I had to beat him up with my fists. The actors still did not want to act for Solomon's movie though. So while they were in the back of the helicopter, I crashed into a few light poles and that was enough to convince them. Then I flew them back to the studio where they apologized to Solomon. Martin Majazzo, the guy whose house we pulled down, called me shortly after that mission and said he needed Michael and Trevor's help with something. When we got to his house, he explained that his cousin was going to testify against him in court. He wanted us to shoot down the plane he was on and make sure he didn't survive the crash. Michael is tasked with shooting down the plane with a sniper. When I tried to give myself the flare gun during this, nothing would happen. So I shot the engine with the sniper and as it was crashing, I chased it down with Trevor. When it crashed, I killed Martin's cousin with the flare gun. Then Michael has to destroy the van. I wanted to drive it into the water since you can't destroy it with a flare gun, and that seemed a little bit better than using a gun to destroy it. Something pretty weird happened though. As soon as it touched the water, it exploded for some reason. I tried to recreate it a few times, but I never could. After it was destroyed, Trevor called Michael and told him to meet somewhere else instead of Martin's house. When I met him there, Trevor let me know he had kidnapped Martin's wife until we got paid for this job. So since Trevor kidnapped a powerful criminal's wife, he and Michael needed to go into hiding. While they were hiding out in the desert, Franklin needed to steal yet another car for Devin. Since this one is in a movie studio, you can dress up as one of the actors and it will make it a lot easier. I, however, just ran in there like a dumbass and was able to steal the car. While driving away, more security came after me. I stopped the car, which caused them to get out of theirs, and I was able to easily pick them off. Then I dropped the car at the lockup. After that, Franklin was starting to wonder where Michael was, so he went to his house, and when he wasn't there, he called him. Michael picked up and explained what was going on. Then Trevor decided he needed to take over a cargo plane that was carrying a bunch of guns for Merryweather. To take over the cargo plane, you have to crash a crop duster into the back of it and kill everyone on board, which I have to say is a great idea when you are supposed to be lying low. After I flew into the back of the plane, I was able to kill all the Merryweather guys by slowly moving up. Then when I climbed the ladder to get to the cockpit, the pilot was pointing a pistol at me. He must have the reaction time of a 100-year-old woman because there were many times he could have shot me but didn't. When I got control of the plane, I almost committed the second biggest plane attack in United States history, but decided not to at the last second. After almost killing hundreds of people with a plane, the military sent fighter jets after me. Eventually, they shot rockets at me and I had to abandon the plane. I parachuted safely to the ground as I watched it crash into the Alamo Sea. After that, I went to the meth lab where I met up with Michael, Steve, and Dave. Dave and Steve explained they need Michael and Trevor to break into a research lab that's making a nerve agent. The only problem with that is Michael and Trevor have no money to get the equipment they need to break into the research lab. It's almost like if Michael didn't dump all of his money into useless stocks, he would still have some. So they decide to rob a bank. They go to scope out a bank in Paleto Bay with Lester. While scoping it out, you have to purposely trigger the alarm. I tried shooting it a bunch of times with a flare gun, but it wouldn't trigger it, so I ended up shooting it with a pistol. After the police check out the alarm, they say over the radio that they are setting up checkpoints because they think it was triggered intentionally, so we decide to race back. While I was driving back, this motorcycle decided to perform a stunt for me. When we got back to the meth lab, I chose Chef to be our other crew member. As I was waiting for the heist setups to become available, Franklin called me and said he was chasing the last of the O'Neill brothers. Eventually they crash and run into the woods. The game switches you to Michael in a helicopter where you are supposed to snipe them. I gave myself the flare gun, which was basically impossible to precisely aim. I ended up shooting randomly hoping to hit them, but I never did and they escaped. Eventually I decided to shoot 2 of them, adding 2 more non-flare gun kills to the count, and that triggered a cutscene. After the cutscene, you switch back to Franklin to track down the last O'Neill brother. I found him and killed him with the flare gun. Then Trevor picked me back up with the helicopter and we flew back to the airfield. Once that mission was complete, a heist setup mission spawned. You have to ambush a military convoy and steal one of their trucks. I parked my truck in front of the convoy, and instead of simply driving around, they decided to get out and start shooting me. Using my truck as cover, I was able to kill all the army guys and take the truck back to the meth lab. Since that was the only heist setup, we were ready to start the heist. The heist starts off with the crew going up to Paleto Bay and dropping Franklin off so he can secure a boat for our getaway. The rest of the crew drives to the bank where we start robbing it. Then the police show up and surround us. We come out of the bank wearing heavy armor and start blasting the cops, or at least the other crew members started blasting the cops. I slowly killed some with the flare gun. Within a few minutes, I ran into a big problem. A helicopter comes in for backup and you cannot progress until it is shot down. It also doesn't help that it kills Michael within a minute of it showing up, limiting my time to find a solution. My first plan was to shoot as many flares as I could at the helicopter within the time limit, but that didn't seem to have any effect on it. Then I tried standing in front of Michael to protect him, which also did not work. I figured if my body wasn't enough cover, I could push him behind a wall where the helicopter couldn't see him. I got him behind a wall, yet somehow the helicopter was still able to kill him. After that, I tried shooting at the helicopter again, but this time I aimed for the SWAT guys shooting on the side. I hit each a few times, but of course it didn't have any effect. I was pretty sure the helicopter couldn't be shot down with flares, but just to make sure, I gave myself infinite ammo and shot a shit ton of flares at it. Just like I thought, it didn't have any effect. I'm not quite sure what my strategy was for this attempt. I think I was a bit angry and took it out on Michael. I failed a bunch more times trying the same strategies I've mentioned. Eventually, I caved in and shot the helicopter down with the pistol to progress the heist. I'm only gonna count 1 kill without a flare gun because the others die in a cutscene. After shooting the helicopter down, you have to shoot down some fences. Surprisingly, the flare gun was able to shoot them down. We ran a bit farther, killing some more cops when the army was called in. I'm surprised they weren't called in sooner since I had such a powerful and devastating weapon. Franklin decides to abandon the boat and drives a bulldozer over to the crew to save them. After picking them up, we drive to a chicken factory and fight off some army guys until a train arrives. We hop on the train and then make our escape. Michael earned over $400,000 from the heist, so of course I decided to invest it for him. It seemed pretty fitting to dump it all in Cluck and Bell since we had just used one of their chicken factories to escape. The next mission was Derailed, which, spoiler alert, was the hardest mission by far in this playthrough. The mission starts off with Trevor jumping a dirt bike onto a train that has something on it to pay off Madrazo. Trevor takes control of it and rams it straight into another train, which causes the containers to fall into the water below, where Michael is waiting to search them. As Michael is searching, 3 Merryweather boats and a helicopter show up. I shot at the guys in the boats, but the flares kept bouncing off of them. I decided to get a bit closer to them to see if the flares had a better effect the closer I was, as well as seeing if I could throw them out. Neither of those things seemed to work. After dying a few times, I ran up the side of the mountain because I knew there was better cover up there. While up there, I called the cops and tried to use their cop car to ram the boats. I think my thought process was if I hit a boat and made it go underwater, it might cause the Merryweather guys to get out. Anyways, I ended up missing horribly and dying shortly after. I wanted to see if the boats could even be destroyed with the flare gun, so I made myself invincible and continuously shot one for 10 minutes. By the end of it, there was more blood on the boat than there is on a tampon. There was also no noticeable damage, so I switched to shooting the helicopter. After 5 minutes, the helicopter wasn't showing any damage either, so I killed myself. My next attempt, I killed a few of the Merryweather guys in the boats, then tried to shoot the others with the flare gun to see if anything had changed. It didn't, the flares just kept bouncing off like before, so I decided to kill all the Merryweather guys in this area of the mission, adding 9 non-flare gun kills, 3 in the helicopter and 6 in the boats. After killing those guys, another helicopter spawns, and this one kills Michael pretty fast. It kills him so fast that I couldn't even swim over in time to try and take some of the shots for him. I gave myself infinite ammo and constantly shot it once it spawned. It didn't matter though, as it still killed Michael. I figured there was no way I would be able to shoot it down with the flare gun, so I shot it down with another gun, adding 3 more non-flare gun kills. After shooting down that helicopter, 4 snipers spawned on the bridge. I was able to hit 3 of them, but the last one was too far. Then another helicopter spawned along with 2 paratroopers. The new helicopter eventually hit hit me with a rocket as I was trying to take out the paratroopers. When the helicopter spawned on my next attempt, I climbed up near the bridge to take cover. I took out one of the paratroopers, then the helicopter blew me up again. After that, I decided to climb on top of the bridge. I did this for a few reasons. Number one, I would be able to take out the final sniper that I wasn't able to hit. Number two, the helicopter wouldn't be able to shoot me because I would be above it. And number three, I could kill the paratroopers much easier. Everything was going to plan until I fell to my death. On my second attempt, I was able to make it on top of the bridge, but since I'm a dumbass, I fell yet again. One of the snipers must have been John Wick because I got sniped as I was falling. My third attempt started off a lot better. I was able to kill one of the snipers, but as I was trying to kill another one, I got shot through the bridge. After dying to the snipers a few more times and raging a little bit,
Are you fucking kidding?
I found out I could kill 2 snipers and still not have the helicopter along with the paratroopers spawn. This made it a lot easier to get up the bridge since I only had to dodge 2 snipers instead of 4. When I got to the top of the bridge, I killed the 3rd sniper, which caused the helicopter and paratroopers to spawn. The paratroopers landed and I was able to find good angles to take them out. After that, I spent nearly 10 minutes shooting flares at the helicopter, which had no effect on it. So I shot it down, which adds another 3 non-flare gun kills. As I was trying to kill the last sniper, he killed me. Also, don't ask why I decided to try and kill him from way down here, because I don't even know why. Once again, I climbed up the bridge and spawned the helicopter. After killing the paratroopers, I remember I never tried to shoot the guy on the side of the helicopter, so I tried it and of course it had no effect on it. I shot down the helicopter and started trying to get close to the final sniper. While trying to climb on a container, I accidentally jumped over the railing on the side of the bridge and fell to my death.
Oh my god.
This is so fucking annoying. Eventually, I made my way back to the final sniper, and yet again, in my infinite wisdom, I found a way to kill myself. I was not very happy with myself for doing that.
Oh my fucking god, I hate my stupid fucking self. What the fuck?
Even though I was angry, I knew if I just took my time and was careful, I could easily get this done. So my next attempt, I easily killed the final sniper and completed the mission. Just kidding, Trevor stumbled while walking up the bridge and I fell to my death yet again. Eventually though, I made my way down to the final sniper where I popped out from behind cover and shot him. All there was left to do was make my way back down to Michael and get the hell out of there. I drove the boat down the river while Trevor killed some Merryweather guys that came after us. We went to the getaway cars and Michael showed Trevor what he took to make things even with Madrazo. Steve called me shortly after I completed that mission and said we were ready to break into the research lab. Michael, Franklin, and Trevor met up with Dave and Steve at a dock near the research lab. Dave or Steve was supposed to tell us this job needed 6 people, but neither of them did, so they end up coming along with us. We drove a boat near the research lab and dove into the water. While underwater, we find a tunnel that leads into the lab. We opened the door and I saw an unarmed scientist that I shot without hesitation. We made our way to an elevator that had another scientist in it who had a key card for us. After killing some more people, we got to the lab that had the nerve agent in it. The scientist behind the door was a little reluctant to open it, but when I killed another scientist in front of him, he opened it. I kindly thanked him for opening the door and collected the nerve agent. We had to kill a bunch of people, but eventually we were able to get outside and put the nerve agent in a refrigeration unit. As Trevor is picking it up, Steve shoots himself in the leg because he's a masochist. I delivered the nerve agent to Sandy Shores where a semi drove off with it. Lester texts Michael that Madrazo forgives him and Trevor for kidnapping his wife, thanks to the statue they stole on Derailed. Trevor then takes Patricia back to Madrazo. Turns out Latinas aren't really his type. After that, Trevor heads back to Floyd's apartment to relax. Once he arrives, he realizes Floyd's girlfriend, Deborah, is back and she isn't too happy about the 2 meth heads living in her apartment. She yells at Trevor to get out, but she doesn't realize that Trevor has this thing called squatter rights. Trevor calmly explains squatter rights to Deborah, and when she doesn't listen, he murders her and Floyd. Shortly after the double homicide, Wade shows up and Trevor takes him to the strip club. Trevor wants to buy the strip club, so he negotiates a fair price with the owner. Shortly after that, we go to check out the Union Depository for a future heist. First, Michael and Franklin check out the guards at the entrances. Then Trevor and Lester follow a convoy of armored trucks to the bank, as well as hovering above a huge opening in the ground. This is all in broad daylight, by the way. Trevor and Lester head back to Sandy Shores, and that's the end of that mission. Then Trevor heads over to Michael's house, where he questions Michael about who is in the casket at his funeral. Michael dodges the question, which makes Trevor suspect it was Brad, so he runs off to North Yankton with Michael following close behind. Michael arrives in North Yankton and goes to his grave where he finds Trevor digging it up. Trevor opens the casket and sees Brad. They're having a standoff when they are ambushed by the Triads, a Chinese gang. Trevor runs off and you are forced to fight your way through them as Michael. Now, I don't know if I'm just bad at this game or if the enemies are harder on this mission, but I would only be able to kill a few of them before they killed me. I ended up deciding to just run by all of them. It took me a few attempts, but eventually I was able to get to the car. The car wouldn't start, so Michael ends up being kidnapped by the Triads. The game switches you back to Trevor, and as you are flying back to Sandy Shores, Wei Chang, the father of Tao Chang, the Chinese guy Trevor met up with earlier in the game. He calls and says he wants to expand into Blaine County, but he can't because of Trevor. To try and force Trevor to stop doing business, Wei Chang tells him he has his lover, Michael. Trevor of course doesn't care about Michael at this point, so he tells them to do whatever they want and lands back at Sandy Shores. After that, Lamar calls Franklin to tell him he got the final vehicle for Devin Weston, and Trevor is waiting for them with the other cars. Franklin meets up with them and they start their long drive to the delivery point. Along the way, cops notice they are transporting stolen vehicles. Franklin climbs onto the back of the semi to get the JB700, the movie car that has guns and spike strips. I wasn't able to kill the cops with the flare guns since they were in cars. I also didn't want to use the spike strips to disable their cars, and thanks to the GOAT Dark Viper AU, I didn't have to. He found out that if you stop the car in front of the semi, it stops moving and the cops get out to try and kill you. Since the cops would get out of their cars, I could kill them now. After a few attempts and some help from the cars passing by, I was able to kill all the cops that spawned. All that was left to do was deliver the cars to Molly, Devin's assistant, where she basically said Devin is taking our money and investing it for us because we are too stupid. I, however, think I'm a great investor. Just look at what I did for Michael. Franklin was starting to wonder where Michael was, so Trevor let him know that the triads had kidnapped him. Franklin calls Lester, who helps him locate Michael's phone, which is in a meatpacking plant. When Franklin gets there, he sees a bunch of triads outside on lookout. I was able to kill most of the ones outside by shooting them from afar. When it came to the guys on the inside, I stayed in cover and slowly picked them off. Eventually, I reached Michael, who was being held in midair with a chain. I tossed him a pistol, which I immediately changed to the flare gun and used it to kill some guys. Franklin decided to move up where he was tackled by a guy with a knife. I thought the shot was going to be really hard, but I got it on my second try. From there, we kill some more triads and make our escape back to Michael's house. Now that Michael is a free man, he decides to go check on his movie producer friend Solomon. When he gets there, he sees Rocco, the talent agent who we stole those actors from, and someone else beating up Solomon. Michael yells at them, which gets them to flee. I start chasing them, but since they are in a car, I can't kill them with the flare gun. So I started crashing into their car trying to disable it. It only took 3 minutes before I was able to pin the car into a bus, causing Rocco to get out. Initially, he was able to get away from me, but I chased him down and shot him. I called Solomon and he invited me back to his office where he sexually assaulted. Wait, wrong movie producer. He just wanted to show me my name was now in the credits of his movie. After that, I went over to Lester's factory to have a meeting with Dave and Steve. Steve explained that the FIB had some evidence against him, so he wants Michael and a crew to break in and erase it. He says that if Michael does this, he will ensure all of his files will be deleted as well. Michael agrees but says this is the last thing he will do for Steve. After our meeting, Lester and I go to the FIB parking lot and wait for a janitor to get off work. When he pulls out, we follow him to his apartment where Michael offers him a paid vacation as long as he can take his outfit. The janitor agreed, then we headed back to the factory, completing the mission. Michael heads home and starts to relax when Jimmy walks in. He basically says that his life is horrible ever since Amanda, Tracy, and him moved out. He convinces Michael to get his family back together, starting off by beating up the yoga instructor in front of Amanda, since that went so well for him the first time, but this time Amanda appreciates it because he insulted Jimmy beforehand. Then Michael and Jimmy head to a tattoo parlor where Tracy is with Laszlo. Michael walks in and cockblocks Laszlo, but in return gives him a free tattoo and some piercings. Laszlo appreciates this so much he agrees to let Tracy on Fame or Shame again. After that, everyone goes to a much needed therapy session, which ends up in Michael and Amanda yelling at each other while their kids sit in silence. A lot like my childhood actually. Then they all head home as a happy family. After that mission, I switched over to Franklin, who had been following an architect who had important blueprints of the FIB's building. Once he got out of his car, I killed him, took his briefcase, and got out of there. I took it back to Lester's factory, then chose the approach for the heist and the crew members. The heist starts off with Lester preparing to burn down his factory to cause a distraction for the crew while they are in the FIB building. Michael and Franklin then head to a government facility where a helicopter and the rest of the crew are waiting for them. We fly above the city as Lester sets fire to his factory and parachute onto the roof. We cut open a window to gain entry into the building and locate the server room. The game wants you to explode the door with a sticky bomb. After I planted it, I tried to shoot it with my flare gun, but it didn't work, like all the other times I tried this in my playthrough. After gaining access to the server room, Michael hacks into the computer and starts deleting all the files when security shows up. I was able to take a lot of them out by staying in cover, and in the middle of the gunfight, our helicopter got shot with a rocket, causing it to crash into the FIB building. I took out the rest of the security and then the hack was finished. We started making our way down the stairs to the helicopter, taking out some guys in the process. We wanted to check on the pilot, but Gravity had a different plan. After that, we continued making our way through the FIB looking for a place to rappel down. Eventually, we found a spot, and as we were rappelling down, a helicopter noticed us chest and started shooting. I was pretty sure that my flare gun wouldn't be able to take it out, but after only 14 shots, it was more disabled than Stephen Hawking. We killed some more guys as we were making our way to the getaway car. Then we headed to Franklin's house and the heist was complete. After that, I called Dave to let him know the job was done and that I was done working for Steve. He told me to meet him at the court center to talk, and after a little bit of arguing, Michael agreed. When I arrived at the court center, Steve was there with Dave. Steve wants to backstab us and arrest us for the FIB heist. He pulls a gun which causes everyone to pull one as well. The FIB along with Merriweather shows up at this time and Steve asks who called the FIB. His partner Sanchez admits he did it, so Steve kills him and a huge gunfight ensues. Dave ran off without me, so I started taking out the FIB agents that were near me. When I tried to catch up with Dave, a helicopter crashed on the stairs which caused me to take a different way. I ended up getting pinned down by a helicopter, then the game switched me to Trevor, who was in a sniper position. The game instructs you to shoot the pilot, so I switched to the flare gun, got a couple shots off, and Michael ended up dying. On my next attempt, I was able to shoot the helicopter a few more times, but it didn't make a difference. I tried a bunch more times with no success, so I ended up shooting the pilot with the sniper, adding one non-flare gun kill. After that, you have to cover Dave as he makes his way to a fountain. When I was finished with that, I switched to Michael and had to fight through some FIB guys to get to Dave. After killing some more guys in the courtyard, we made our way to the parking lot. I got in a car and began to drive away when a helicopter started coming after me. I was able to lose it by driving a very short distance away from it. Michael and Trevor meet up in an alley and Michael thanks him for saving his life. After Michael was done with that, Trevor convinced him to do one last score, the Union Depository. Before we could get on with that though, we had a few things to do. First, Michael had to meet with Solomon at the movie studio regarding an issue with their movie. When he arrives, Devin and Molly are there. Devin wants to shut down the movie, which will give him a huge insurance payout. Then Molly steals the supposed only copy of the movie and starts heading to Devin's hangar to destroy it. Michael chases after her and eventually catches up by the airport. Molly has a police escort which she leads around the runway, causing some of them to die. She crashes into the back of Devin's hangar and runs inside, where she gets too close to a plane's engine. It sucks her inside harder than Monica Lewinsky sucked Bill Clinton. Luckily, the tape survived, so I picked it up and made my escape from the police. Michael calls Solomon, who explains that wasn't the only copy of the movie, so Molly ended up dying for nothing. I switched over to Franklin and headed to his house. Shortly after arriving, his ex Tanisha came over, and no, this wasn't some "I missed you so much, let's get back together." She just came over to tell Franklin Lamar had been kidnapped by some gangsters. Franklin called Lester and asked him to find Lamar's specific location. Lester narrowed it down to a sawmill up in Paleto Bay. He also told Trevor and Michael to meet Franklin there for backup. When I got there, the game switched me to Trevor, who I was supposed to put in an assault position, but instead I just ran straight in there and started shooting. I took out most of the guys near the entrance, and we started making our way deeper into the sawmill. The only hard thing about this part was a couple long shots I had to do, but other than that, we made our way to Lamar pretty easily. I shot a guy who was standing over Lamar, which caused him to fall on Lamar, lighting him on fire for a few seconds. Lamar started acting very weird after this. First, he climbed onto the roof and climbed back down shortly after. Then he started running back and forth to this spot every few seconds. I headed to the front of the sawmill thinking it might progress the mission. It didn't, so I decided to fail, thinking I had gotten a checkpoint. And when I found out I didn't, I wasn't very happy.
Are you fucking kidding me? Jesus Christ, this shit is so fucking stupid.
It took a few attempts, but I made my way back to Lamar, and this time I let Franklin kill the guy so Lamar wouldn't catch on fire. All that was left to do after that was kill some reinforcements and make sure Lamar got home safe. I don't think Lamar will be leaving a 5-star review for Franklin after that. After Michael was done helping Franklin save Lamar, it was time for his movie premiere. I bought a tux at Poison Boys and Jimmy picked me up in a limo. When we arrived at the movie premiere, I said hi to my friend Laszlo, then Devin arrived. We took a few pictures together, then he hinted that something might be happening to Amanda and Tracy at home. We quickly made our way back home to find some Merriweather guys breaking in. One of them had Amanda at gunpoint on the stairs, and whenever I would try to shoot my flare gun, he would shoot her before the flare reached him. So I ended up shooting him, adding one more non-flare gun kill. Amanda let me know one of them had Tracy, so we both rushed to her room. My flare must have gotten an upgrade in the time it took to run up the stairs, because when I shot the guy, he flew up and hit the ceiling. Unfortunately, the fire it caused ended up killing Tracy as well. On my next attempt, I quickly ran into Tracy's room and shot him. Michael tells both of them to stay in Tracy's room as he takes out the incoming Merriweather. I was making quick work of the reinforcements when they sent in a guy who could go invisible. I guess they thought I was too powerful with my flare gun. Anyway, I took out the rest and headed upstairs to check on Amanda and Tracy. When I got up there, a Merriweather guy hit me with his gun, causing me to fall down. Luckily, Jimmy was able to sneak up behind him and hit him on the head with a bong. I guess he wanted to show Michael he was the man of the house now because he started teabagging him. Michael pushes him off and tells them to move out for a few days until it's safe again. The next mission is planning the big score, and you'll never guess what we do in it. We plan the big score. I know, crazy stuff. Michael heads to the strip club where Trevor, Franklin, and Lester are waiting for him. I chose the subtle approach because it seemed like it would be easier. Then I chose the crew members. I never knew this, but since I used Ricky for all the other heists, he was basically better than Paige now. The first heist setup I had to do was steal a van that had spike strips from the LSPD. After I got in it, I gained 2 stars, which I easily lost, and delivered it back to the strip club. Then I had to go steal 3 muscle cars that Lester had found. When I got in the first one, I realized I had a little bit of a problem. Since Michael was gambling, I mean investing in the stock market, he didn't have enough money for the necessary modifications for the car. So unfortunately, Michael had to sell some of his stocks. It wasn't really the best time either because 3 out of 4 of them had lost money, over $200,000 to be exact. I collected all 3 cars and applied the necessary modifications to them. After that, the final heist was ready to go. I headed to the strip club where the crew was waiting for me. To start off the big score, we drove to a tunnel and ambushed the armored trucks that were heading to the Union Depository. We took one of the drivers as a hostage and continued on. When we got there, we were easily able to get in using our disguises. We loaded up the gold and were heading out when Franklin called us to let us know Merryweather were after us. As Franklin, I hacked into the traffic control system and made Merryweather stop at certain red lights, which allowed the trucks to make it back to the strip club. While we were loading the gold in the cars, Merryweather found us and started shooting at us. To take out the initial guys, I stayed in the same spot and slowly picked them off. More Merryweather spawned on the left side, so I kept moving back and forth, taking out some from the front and some from the left each time. When the snipers spawned, I had to get pretty close to them to take them out, but other than that, they weren't a problem. In fact, this whole heist didn't really give me any problems. I took out the rest of Merryweather, then we hopped in the cars and made a clean getaway, except for one of our drivers who got arrested, but we'll just ignore that and hope he doesn't snitch. After completing the final heist, I headed back to Franklin's house when he got a knock at his door. It turned out to be Devin, who said he wanted me to kill Michael for him. Steve Haynes also wants Franklin to kill Trevor, so he is in a really tough spot right now. You can choose to kill Michael or Trevor, but there is a third option, which of course I chose. Franklin called Lester and told him he was in a really tough situation and needed to talk. Lester invited Franklin over, and after making my graceful entry into his house, Lester came up with a plan to help me. He said he would tell Steve and Devin that we were melting all the gold we just stole out of Foundry, since both of them would want the glory in assisting in the capture of bank robbers who just stole a bunch of money. They both might show up there. Franklin agrees, so Lester calls to tell Michael and Trevor the plan. Franklin also calls Lamar for backup. When they arrive at the Foundry, Lamar waits outside and Franklin heads in with Michael and Trevor. Franklin instructs them to get into positions, and we wait for the FIB and Merryweather to show up. The FIB is the first to arrive in the Foundry. I was taking them out when Lamar said he needed help outside. I ran out and was helping him take out the SWAT when Michael said he was worried about Trevor. He wasn't responding and there was a SWAT team near him. Franklin had to stay outside with Lamar, so I switched to Michael and made my way over to Trevor. When I got there, it turned out Trevor was just being a lazy bastard and taking a break. Michael and Trevor took out the rest of the SWAT that was inside. Then they made their way outside to fight some incoming Merryweather guys. After killing everyone that was outside, we had a meeting where we agreed there was still more people we needed dead. 4 people to be exact. Steve Haynes, Stretch, Wei Chang, who is the leader of the Triads who kidnapped Michael, and Devin Weston. First, I went to take out Wei Chang as Franklin, and oh boy, this was a lot harder than I expected. On my first attempt, I drove up in a Prius and started shooting. Wei Chang was able to get in a car before I hit him, and they started to drive off. I followed him for a few miles, trying to disable his car by shooting it and crashing into it. Eventually, his convoy was able to shoot my Prius enough to disable it, so I was forced to get a new car. I followed Wei Chang for a few more miles in my new car, and after a while, it started leaking fuel. As I got out to try and get a new car, the bodyguards killed me. On my second attempt, and every attempt from now on, the game spawned me in the parking lot with them. I drove in front of Wei Chang's car to stop it and got out to steal it, which caused Wei Chang to get out. I drove a slight distance away. Then for some reason, I decided to drive back into the parking lot instead of shooting them from afar or basically anything else, which caused me to get shot and die almost immediately. On my next attempt, I tried stealing the car again, but the driver was able to drive away away before I could. I followed it for a while and tried to steal it again, but they killed me before I could drive away. My next attempt, I was able to steal the car in the parking lot and played a bit smarter this time, taking out a few of the bodyguards from a distance. I even got close enough to Wei Chang to have a clear shot at him, which I am pretty certain should have hit him, but it didn't for some reason. After a while, they were able to kill me. After many more attempts and some more flares seeming like they were going through him, I figured something must be wrong. They were getting pretty close to killing me, so I decided to head down to the beach and take cover by some rocks. Wei Chang followed me down, and now my flares seem to work like normal. I think the reason why my flares were going through him was because I was inside a car, even though that wasn't a problem in any other mission. I got back in the car and was able to escape the rest of the triads. Next, I had to kill Stretch as Michael. It was super easy. I just drove near him and shot him from my car. I escaped the ballas and switched to Trevor to kill Steve Haynes, who was filming for his show on a Ferris wheel. On my first attempt, I got close to try and shoot him, and it seemed like the flare bounced off of something. I tried a few more times, but it was pretty clear Steve couldn't be killed with a flare gun. Hell, I even tried shooting 10 flares at a time at him, but that didn't work. So I ended up shooting him with a sniper, adding 1 non-flare gun kill to the count. There was still Devin Weston to kill. He was hiding in his mansion, protected by some Merryweather. I drove there as Trevor and took out a total of 7 Merryweather guards. I don't know if it was the sequence I killed them in or something else, but I remember having to kill a lot more of them in this mission. Trevor finds Devin and knocks him out and puts him in the trunk of a car. Trevor calls Michael and Franklin to let them know he had Devin and to meet him outside of the city. I drove to the meeting point where we all pushed the car off of a cliff, killing Devin. I'm not gonna count this as a non-flare gun kill because he died in a cutscene and all 3 of us were pushing the car, so it wasn't really me killing him. After completing the final mission, I switched to Michael so I could invest his fortune for him. I saw Life Invader was down about 75%, so I figured the only way it could go was up. I put every last dollar of Michael's 14 million into it, and after a quick sleep, Michael had already lost nearly $350,000. Well, I guess it wasn't time for Michael to retire. Better get back to doing some heists. In the end, we had a total of
27
non-flare gun kills. This video took me a really long time to make. The gameplay alone was over 24 hours, and the script I wrote was over 45 pages long. So if you guys could please leave a like, comment, and subscribe, I would really appreciate it, and maybe even share it with a friend who you think would enjoy it as well. If this video gets enough views, then I am totally down to make another one using a different gun. I hope you guys have a good one. See ya.